My name is Audrey Miller. Before I met Zane Carter, my life was a pre-planned, smooth and polished runway. A trust fund, a degree from a good school, a VP title at my family's venture capital firm by 28. My biggest drama was an unexpected market correction. My friends called me elegant, my parents called me sensible, and I believed a good girl should be just like that. Rule-following, poised, waiting for a partnership that made sense. Then Zane Carter crashed into my orbit like a meteor made of grit and gasoline. He was nothing like the men in my world. He was a self-taught graphic artist who'd clawed his way out of a rough neighborhood, ran a small but edgy tattoo parlor and design studio, and had a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and a smirk that said he knew all the rules but played by his own. We met at a charity auction for an arts outreach program. I was on the board, he was a featured artist whose work we'd funded. He looked at my Chanel suit and said, "So, do you actually like this stuff or is it just the tax write-off that gets you going?" I was floored. No one talked to me like that. Strangely, I wasn't offended. I was electrified. He ditched the post-auction cocktail hour, took me to a dive bar for the best greasy burger I'd ever had, and talked about art not as an asset class, but as a raw, vital scream. His eyes held a fire I'd never seen in a boardroom. I fell hard. Despite the fierce opposition from Jonathan John, Wright, my childhood friend, business partner, and the closest thing I had to a brother. He sat me down in his office, his voice low and serious. "Audrey, have your fun. But marriage? That's a merger. And he brings nothing to the table but chaos. If you're determined, the prenup will be ironclad. Non-negotiable." I thought John was a heartless snob reducing my beautiful messy love to a balance sheet. I believed love could bridge any gap, that my stability could be the anchor for his wild spirit. I saw his aloofness as depth, his recklessness as passion. I quietly steered several high-profile branding projects from our portfolio companies to his tiny studio, Carter's Inc. I watched him land the covers, get the features, his confidence swelling. I thought I was building us. He proposed on the roof of his studio, the city lights sprawling below us, with a ring he'd designed himself, a raw diamond set in twisted platinum. It was imperfect, unique. He kissed me and said, "You're from a different planet, Audrey. But I want to learn the language." I said yes, my heart soaring. This was the real thing. The escape from my gilded cage. The crack appeared almost immediately. A few weeks after the engagement, Zane said his crew wanted to celebrate. They'd booked a suite at a trendy boutique hotel. I was nervous. His friends were artists, musicians, people who lived in the margins. They intimidated me with their easy cool. But I wanted to belong for him. I wore a simple black dress, trying to blend in. The suite was loud, clouded with vape smoke and the bass from a portable speaker. His friends, a sculptor named Dex, a musician called Vega, and a few others, were a whirl of leather jackets and bold tattoos. Zane was already several drinks in, his arms slung around my shoulders. "Everyone, this is Audrey, my fiancée. Can you believe it?" he announced, his voice proud. There were cheers, toasts. I smiled, clinging to my glass. But as the night wore on and the bottle emptied, the tone shifted. The jokes got cruder, the conversations more explicit. Vega started telling a graphic story about a hookup in Barcelona. I shifted uncomfortably, my smile feeling stiff. I gently tugged Zane's sleeve. He just squeezed my hand a little too hard. "Relax, princess. They're just messing around." Then the floor dropped out from under me. Dex, a guy with gauged ears and sharp eyes, leaned forward, a wicked grin on his face. "So Zane, swapping the gallery scene for the boardroom. Gotta ask. How does our Wall Street angel compare to, say, Sloane? In the enthusiasm department." Sloane. The name was a shard of ice in my chest. I knew of her. Zane's legendary ex. A pole dancing instructor and freelance photographer, their relationship was a mythos of passionate fights and public makeups. He'd muttered her name once, drunk and melancholy, but had brushed it off when sober. Zane, his eyes glazed with whiskey, let out a loud, derisive laugh. He pulled me closer, his breath hot against my ear, but his voice was loud enough for the whole room. She's beautiful, man. But in bed? Total starfish. Nothing like Sloane. I'm telling you, it's like night and day. If it weren't for her families. One of the other guys, a quieter one named Leo, suddenly knocked over his drink. "Shit, man, watch it." The words hung in the smoky air, sharper and more toxic than any smoke. Starfish. The laughter that followed from the others was a physical blow. My face burned. My hands, holding my champagne flute, began to tremble so violently the liquid sloshed over the rim onto my dress, cold and shocking. I looked at Zane. His smirk faltered for a second, seeing my expression, but then he shrugged as if to say, "What? It's just a joke. Can't you take a joke?" In that moment the entire illusion shattered. I wasn't his muse, his escape, his great love. I was a trophy with a trust fund. A starfish he tolerated for access. The curated projects, the softness I'd mistaken for vulnerability, the way he'd let me into his world only to mock me within it. It all crystallized into a single humiliating truth. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A terrifying calm settled over me. I carefully set the trembling flute down on a side table. I looked Zane dead in the eye, my voice eerily quiet, cutting through the music. "The merger is off." I turned and walked out of the suite, the sound of their stunned silence more satisfying than any slammed door. In the elevator alone, the shaking returned full force. I pulled out my phone, my vision blurring. I found the contact for our family lawyer and typed a 2-word email. Terminate engagement. Initiate asset recapture on all Carter's Inc. projects. I leaned against the cold elevator wall. I thought that was the end of Zane Carter. I was wrong. It was only the beginning of the war. Walking out of that hotel was like stepping out of a fever dream into a cold, clear night. The trembling in my hands didn't stop until I was safely in the back of my town car. The partition up, the silence absolute. The calm I'd felt was gone, replaced by a sick, hollow fury that vibrated in my bones. Starfish. The word echoed, a cruel taunt. But worse was the casual betrayal, the way he'd sliced me open for the amusement of his friends. And Sloane. Always Sloane. I went straight to my apartment, the one I'd bought with my first big bonus. A sleek, modern space that felt suddenly sterile and empty. I poured myself a stiff drink I didn't touch. I just stared at the city lights, trying to piece my shredded pride back together. My phone buzzed incessantly. Zane. First, confused texts. "Audrey, where'd you go? Come back, babe." They didn't mean anything. Then defensive. "You're overreacting. It was just guy talk. You know I love you." Finally angry. "You're really gonna walk out over a joke? Typical. Can't handle the real world." I blocked his number. Then I called John. He answered on the first ring. "Audrey. I heard there was an incident." Of course he'd heard. John had eyes and ears everywhere. "Terminate everything," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "The engagement. All business throughput to Carter's Inc. I want every contract, every introduction, every shred of influence my name provided rescinded. I want it done by tomorrow." There was a long pause on the other end. I could picture him in his impeccably tidy office, steepling his fingers. "Are you sure? This isn't a tempo you can call back." "I've never been more sure of anything," I whispered, the emotion finally cracking through. He humiliated me, John. In front of everyone." Another pause, softer. "I'll handle it. And Audrey? The prenup we drafted, it has clauses for this. Disparagement, infidelity of a non-sexual nature. We'll make it hurt where it counts." "Good," I said and hung up. I felt no triumph, only a deep, weary sadness. The dream was dead and I was left holding the cold, sharp pieces. The next week was a blur of legal motions and icy professionalism. Zane was furious, of course. He stormed into the lobby of our firm, demanding to see me, shouting about betrayal and stolen opportunities. Security escorted him out. He sent rambling, pleading emails to my lawyer, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that Sloane meant nothing, that he was drunk. It was pathetic. I threw myself into work. I approved John's choice for a strategic alliance. A merger of hearts and portfolios with Elias Thorne, the second son of the Thorne banking dynasty. We'd moved in the same circles for years. He was handsome in a clean-cut, calculated way, brilliant with numbers and famously discreet. Our first meeting was at a private club. He slid a folder across the table. "I know this isn't about sentiment, Audrey," he said, his voice calm, his gaze direct. "This is a mutually beneficial alliance. My family needs your firm's innovation pipeline. Yours could use our European foothold and liquidity. The terms are all there. We agree to a partnership for 3 years publicly. After that, we reevaluate. A clean, pre-negotiated dissolution agreement is included. I read it. It was ruthlessly fair. It protected my assets, my family's interests, and offered clear, substantial benefits. There was no pretense of romance, just respect and a shared goal. I signed without hesitation. It felt like putting on a suit of armor. There's the Westgate development, I said, tapping the document. My father's keen on it. It needs to be part of the package. Elias nodded. Consider it done. And I'll need your influence on the tech council appointment for my brother. Done, I said. We shook hands. It was the most honest interaction I'd had with a man in months. The announcement of our relationship was a masterclass in PR. Society pages buzzed. It was the perfect narrative. The heartbroken heiress finding stability with a scion of equal standing. A phoenix rising from the ashes of a misguided fling. Thought I was free. I thought Zane, faced with the loss of my money and connections, would slink back to his world. I was wrong. 3 days after the announcement, my assistant buzzed me, her voice tense. Ms. Miller, there's a situation in the parking garage. Mr. Carter is here. He's refusing to leave. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Have security remove him. He's blocking your car, ma'am. I went down. The cold, concrete space smelled of exhaust and damp. There he was, leaning against the driver's side door of my Mercedes, looking hollowed out and desperate. His cool artist veneer was gone. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. Audrey, he said, his voice ragged. Please. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Zane. Move away from my car. You can't do this, he burst out, stepping toward me. Security moved in, but I held up a hand. You can't just throw me away like yesterday's trash. I made a mistake. I was stupid, I was drunk. Those guys, they get in my head. You know I don't belong in your world. I was trying to act like I did. Acting like you did involved calling me a dead fish to your friends? My voice was ice. He flinched. It was a terrible joke. But this. He gestured wildly as if encompassing my building, my suit, my life. Running to some rich boy like Elias Thorne? Is that your revenge? To show me I'm nothing? This has nothing to do with you, I said, and I meant it. This is about my future. One that doesn't include being mocked and disrespected. Now for the last time, move. He didn't. Instead, his eyes filled with a frantic, possessive light. You're mine, Audrey. You know you are. I was your first. That means something. The vulgarity of it, the reduction of everything to a crude physical claim, took my breath away. Get out of my way, Zane. No, he planted his feet. Not until you listen. Just then, the sharp roar of a motorcycle echoed through the garage. A figure on a sleek Ducati pulled up, killing the engine. The rider took off her helmet, shaking out a cascade of long, dark hair. Sloane. She was all leather and defiant angles, her smile a slash of crimson. Well, she drawled, swinging off the bike. Look what the cat dragged in. Having a little tantrum, Zane? Zane's face contorted. Sloane, not now. Oh, I think now is perfect. She sauntered over, ignoring security completely, her eyes raking over me with open contempt. So this is the famous Audrey. The one who has an allergy attack and acts like she's dying because of a little green onion. She smirked. Zane told me all about it. Dramatic. The world seemed to tilt. Green onion. My allergy. I'd told Zane in confidence early on when he'd ordered takeout. He'd been so concerned then. And he'd shared it with her. As a joke. A weakness to be mocked. Sloane hooked her arm through Zane's, a gesture of blatant ownership. Come on, baby. She's not worth it. Let the princess go play with her new prince. We've got better things to do. I saw the conflict on Zane's face. The pull of his old life, the desperation to cling to mine. For a second he hesitated. Then Sloane leaned in, whispering something in his ear, and he seemed to deflate. He looked at me, a strange mix of apology and resentment in his eyes, and let her lead him away to the motorcycle. He looked back once as she revved the engine. But I was already turning, my heels clicking a firm, final rhythm on the concrete as I walked back to the elevator. My heart was a stone in my chest. It wasn't just the humiliation anymore. It was the violation. He'd shared my vulnerabilities as currency with his ex. There was no lower depth. Back in my office, I stood at the window watching the tiny speck of the motorcycle weave into traffic. The phone on my desk rang. It was Elias. I heard there was an issue in the garage, he said, his tone neutral. Do you require additional security? His lack of drama, his simple, practical offer was a bomb. It's handled, I said. But thank you. The fundraiser at the museum is next week, he continued smoothly as if discussing the weather. We should attend together. Present a united front. Of course, I replied. As I hung up, I realized the engagement with Zane hadn't just been a mistake. It had been a dangerous detour. Elias Thorne represented a return to sanity, to a world where agreements were honored and respect was a given, not a prize to be withheld. Zane and Sloane were chaos. And I was done with chaos. But chaos, I was learning, wasn't done with me. Later that night, as I was packing a weekend bag for a trip to the Hamptons, my phone buzzed with a notification from a cloud storage folder I rarely used. One linked to an old tablet. Curiosity made me open it. And there they were. Photos. Time-stamped from the morning after the hotel party, just 20 minutes after I'd walked out. Photos of rumpled, blood-stained hotel sheets. And one taken from behind of my bare back as I'd dressed, unaware. My blood turned to ice. He'd taken them. As trophies. Then a second later, a screenshot popped up, sent to me anonymously from a burner account. It was a group chat transcript. Zane. Image sent. Textful. Evidence. How was it really? Zane, like a starfish man. Told you. 0 compared to Sloane. Vega, body's nice though. Could be trained. Zane. Maybe Sloane can give her some lessons when she's done being mad. Dexu. Project. Reform the princess. The messages swam before my eyes. The photos, the chat. It was a level of violation so profound I couldn't even breathe. He hadn't just insulted me. He'd documented our intimacy and shared it for locker room points. He'd offered me up to his ex for lessons. Nausea rose in my throat. I stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the cold marble sink. I looked at my pale, horrified reflection in the mirror. Audrey, I thought, the full weight of my naivete crashing down. You pathetic, trusting fool. The anger that followed was pure and incinerating. It burned away the last remnants of sadness of what? This wasn't just a bad boyfriend. This was an enemy. And enemies needed to be destroyed. The white-hot fury that followed seeing those photos settled into a cold, hard diamond in my chest. It was no longer about heartbreak. It was about justice. About ensuring Zane Carter understood that every action has a consequence. And some consequences are career-ending, reputation-shattering, and utterly, irrevocably final. I did not cry. I did not scream. I saved the screenshots, secured the cloud folder with the photos as evidence, and forwarded everything to John and our head of security with a single instruction. Leverage at your discretion. I want him to feel it. Then I went to the Hamptons. I walked on the beach with Elias, discussing market volatility and vineyard acquisitions. I smiled for the society photographers, my hand resting lightly on his arm. The narrative of Audrey Miller moving on gracefully with Elias Thorne was cemented in glossy print. I played my part perfectly, all while the cold diamond of my resolve pulsed within me. A week later, the first blow landed. The major branding campaign for a new luxury athleisure line, the one I'd handed to Carter's Inc., was abruptly terminated, due to a misalignment of creative vision. The client, a friend of my father's, cited a clause about brand safety. It was a polite corporate assassination. My phone, which I'd unblocked for this very purpose, lit up with Zane's number. What the hell, Audrey? His voice was a snarl stripped of all pretense. You pulled the Zenith campaign? Do you have any idea how much work we put into that? My team is freaking out. I was at my desk looking over the Thorne-Miller Alliance prospectus. I'm sorry, Zane, I said, my tone flat, professional. Client decisions are beyond my control. Perhaps their vision evolved. Bullshit, he exploded. This is you. This is your petty revenge. You're trying to destroy me. Destroy you. I repeated softly. I'm not doing anything, Zane. The market is simply correcting. I hung up. The next day, 2 more mid-sized projects evaporated. The whispers started in his industry. Carter's Inc. is losing its touch. Maybe their connection dried up. He showed up at my apartment again. This time he looked truly desperate, the cocky artist gone, replaced by a man facing ruin. The doorman called up. "Let him in," I told the intercom. "Send him up." I needed to see this. I needed to look him in the eye. He stormed into my living room, his energy frantic. "You have to stop this, Audrey. Please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll apologize on fucking billboards. I was an idiot. Those guys. The photos. It was a moment of stupidity. I was hurt you left." I stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights. It wasn't a moment, Zane. It was a choice. Several choices. To mock me. To share intimate images. To offer me up for lessons from Sloan. I turned to face him. "You didn't just break my heart. You tried to strip me of my dignity. Did you think there would be no cost?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. I don't know what I thought. I was drunk, I was showing off. But Audrey, I love you. Doesn't that mean anything? The word love in his mouth felt like a blasphemy. "No," I said simply. "Not after that. Love doesn't photograph its partner without consent for bragging rights." He sank onto my sofa, head in his hands. "What do you want from me?" "Blood." "I want you to understand," I said, walking closer. My calm was unnerving even to me. "I want you to feel the full weight of what you did. And then I want you to leave my life forever." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "I understand. I do. I'm drowning, Audrey. The studio. I might lose it." "A consequence," I nodded. "Now. There's one more thing." I picked up a remote and turned on the large screen TV on my wall. It showed security footage, time-stamped from the night of the hotel party. It was from a camera in the hallway, showing Zane slipping out of the suite, phone in hand, heading toward the service elevator. "You left the party. Where did you go for 20 minutes, Zane?" His face went chalk white. I needed air. "I went to the roof." "The roof access is on the other side of the building," I said, clicking to the next clip. This one was from the lobby, showing him at the concierge desk, talking animatedly. "You were at the desk, asking for a particular kind of champagne. The one Sloan likes. You had it sent to a different room. 814. The blood drained from his face completely. He said nothing. "Room 814 was rented for a week," I continued, my voice like shards of glass. "Under your name. The hotel's records show a woman matching Sloane's description used a keycard to access it just 30 minutes after our party started." I turned off the screen and looked at him. "You didn't just talk about her, Zane. You had her in the building. While I was in the next room, believing I was celebrating our future." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of the city below. The last shred of his defense was gone. Caught. Not in hearsay but in cold, digital fact. He didn't try to deny it. The fight left his body in a rush, leaving him looking small and shattered. It didn't mean anything. It was just old times. A mistake. "Everything with you is a mistake," I said, walking to the door and holding it open. "But some mistakes are felonies. Sharing those photos without my consent is a crime, Zane. A serious one. The screenshots of your little group chat are already with my lawyer." Panic flooded his eyes. Real, legal, tangible panic. "You wouldn't. Try me." He stumbled to his feet, his bravado a distant memory. He paused in the doorway, looking at me with a mixture of awe and terror. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the consequence," I said, and closed the door softly in his face. I leaned against it, finally allowing myself to shake. The confrontation had taken everything I had. But it was done. He knew I knew everything. The power balance had irrevocably shifted. The following days were a study in collapse. Carter's Inc. lost its remaining clients. The buzz was now a death knell. Zane stopped calling. I heard through the grapevine that Sloan had stuck around for the drama but was growing impatient as the money dried up. I focused on the alliance with Elias. We attended the museum gala. He was impeccable, attentive, engaging, a perfect mirror to my own polished facade. He introduced me to his family, who were polite, assessing, and clearly approved of the strategic sense of our union. It was all so sane. So orderly. One evening, after a tedious planning dinner with wedding coordinators, a necessary public spectacle, Elias drove me home. As we pulled up to my building, he didn't immediately reach for the door. "The situation with your former fiancé," he said, staring straight ahead through the windshield. "It appears to be resolving." It is, I confirmed. My legal team is excellent, he said, his tone matter of fact. If you need to press charges regarding the distribution of intimate images, they would be very effective. Discreetly if you prefer. I looked at his profile, sharp and composed in the dashboard lights. He wasn't offering out of jealousy or possessiveness. He was offering a tool from his toolbox. Thank you, Elias. I'll keep that in mind. He nodded. This alliance works best if we operate from a position of strength. Unresolved scandals are a weakness. I merely wish to remove weaknesses. It was the most unromantic and yet the most reassuring thing anyone had said to me in a year. Understood. I got out of the car and as it pulled away I felt a strange sense of clarity. With Zane, everything had been hurricanes of emotion. Highs so high, lows that shattered me. With Elias there was no hurricane. There was a well-drawn map, a shared destination and a mutual agreement not to set the ship on fire. I was about to go inside when a figure detached itself from the shadows near the service entrance. My heart leapt to my throat before I recognized the weary slump of the shoulders. Zane. He looked worse than before, unshaven, his eyes hollow. He held up his hands in a gesture of surrender. I'm not here to fight. I need to say something. I crossed my arms, not moving from the safety of the well-lit lobby entrance. Say it. He took a shaky breath. You were right. About everything. I was insecure. I was trying to be a big man in front of people who don't matter. I used you. I betrayed you. And the photos. He shook his head, genuine shame twisting his features. That was the lowest thing I've ever done. There's no excuse. I waited silent. I'm losing everything, Audrey. The studio's lease is up next month. I can't pay it. My team is gone. Sloane, he let out a bitter laugh. She's not exactly the for worse type. She bailed when the free champagne stopped. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I almost meant it. The spectacle of his self-immolation was tragic. I know you're with Thorne now. And I know I deserve this. He met my eyes and for the first time, there was no manipulation, no hidden agenda, just bleak defeat. I just needed you to know that I see it now. The magnitude of what I did. You were a gift and I treated you like trash. I'll never forgive myself. He turned to leave. Saying. He stopped. The photos, I said, my voice cold. Delete them. Every copy. And have every person in that group chat delete them. If a single one ever surfaces from any source, I will not send my lawyer. I will send the district attorney. And I will bankrupt you defending the lawsuit that follows. Are we clear? He nodded, a jerky, defeated movement. Crystal. He walked away into the night, a ghost of the man who'd once made me feel alive. I watched him go. The diamond of anger in my chest softened, not into forgiveness but into something like closure. The predator was defanged. The game was over. I walked into my building, the heavy glass door sealing behind me with a hushed sigh. It was finally, truly done. Or so I thought. Closure, I learned, is not a single event. It's a process, and the process was poisoned by a single lingering image burned onto the back of my eyelids. My own bare back, captured without my knowledge, shared like a digital trading card. The legal threats had secured deletion, I believed. The professional ruin I'd engineered had delivered a kind of justice. Zane was a ghost, haunting the ruins of his own making. My life with Elias was a smooth, ascendant track. But the violation had left a stain. It festered in quiet moments. It made me flinch at unexpected camera flashes. It made intimacy with Elias feel like a clinical procedure, which, in fairness, it largely was. We were cordial, even friendly. We discussed architecture over dinner and market trends over breakfast. We attended functions as a flawless unit. The press called us the Golden Merger. Privately, I felt like a beautifully restored vase. Valuable, intact, but fundamentally cracked beneath the glaze. Elias, to his credit, was perceptive. He never pushed. He created space with the same precision he applied to a financial model. The penthouse renovation is complete, he said one evening, handing me a key card. You should see your quarters. Ensure they meet your specifications. Your quarters. Not ours. The arrangement was clear. Separate wings connected by a grand living area for entertaining. It was the epitome of discreet, modern partnership. I took the key. The new space was breathtaking. All clean lines, curated art, and silence. It was also profoundly lonely. I stood in the center of the vast living room, and the memory of Zane's chaotic incense-scented studio, crowded with half-finished canvases and loud music, ambushed me. Not with longing but with a sharp sense of dislocation. I had traded a toxic wildfire for a sterile vacuum. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. An unknown number. A text with a link to a live streaming platform. The preview thumbnail made my stomach drop. Zane and Sloane sitting in what looked like a shuttered, empty restaurant. The caption read, "The truth, persecuted by the 1%. A cold dread pooled in my gut. I clicked it. The stream was already trending. Sloane, her blue-black hair stark against the peeling paint behind her, spoke directly to the camera, her eyes wide with manufactured tears. "She's trying to erase us," she said, her voice trembling. "Because we're real and she's not. Because we loved each other and she can't stand that anyone existed before her." The camera panned to Zane. He looked ravaged, hollow, a perfect portrait of the broken artist. He put his arm around Sloane. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice ragged. "I hurt Audrey. I've admitted that. But does that mean I deserve to have my life's work destroyed? Does she have to hound the woman I loved before her into bankruptcy?" He gestured to the empty diner around them. Sloane's place. Health inspectors, fire marshals, licensing boards. They've been here every week for months. Coincidence? Or a coordinated attack from someone with the resources to crush small businesses? The chat scrolled beside the video, a torrent of outrage. "This is disgusting. Rich people think they own everything. So what if he messed up? She's literally trying to make them homeless. Her new fiancé is Elias Thorne. Of course she's above the law." My hands turned to ice. This wasn't a plea. It was a declaration of war. A savvy, manipulative, and deeply public war. They were recasting themselves as the victims, the little guys being stomped by my corporate heel. And they were doing it on the very platform where public sympathy was a currency. The stream cut to a grainy, edited clip from the night of my allergic reaction at Sloane's diner months ago. A story I'd tried to bury. It showed me, face flushed, struggling, while Zane's voiceover said, "She had a minor allergy. We got her help immediately. But now she's using it to claim we tried to hurt her." The clip conveniently ended before showing him forcibly shoving the scallion-laden food into my mouth. I watched, paralyzed, as the narrative solidified in real time. I was the vengeful, spiteful heiress. They were the star-crossed lovers, punished for a past transgression. My phone rang. It was John, his voice uncharacteristically tense. "You've seen it. I'm watching it. We need to respond." "No." Thorne's PR team is already lighting up. "This is a direct attack on the merger's stability." "I didn't do those things," I said, my voice small. "The inspections, that wasn't me." "It doesn't matter what's true," John snapped. "It matters what's believed. And right now they're writing the story. We need the counter-narrative. Do you have proof?" "From the diner." I thought of the driver who'd picked me up that day. "Maybe," I said. "Let me make a call." I hung up and immediately dialed my driver, Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Ms. Miller. I assume you're calling about the video." "Marcus, that day at the diner. You came in to find me. Did you see anything?" There was a pause. "I saw enough, ma'am. And there was a young woman. A college student doing a video project on small businesses. She was filming the exterior when the commotion happened. He caught some of it through the window. She gave me her card, said if the rich lady needed a witness to the disgusting behavior, she had footage." A spark of hope, fierce and desperate, ignited in my chest. "Do you have her contact information?" "I do." An hour later, I was in a conference room with John, Elias, and two of Thorne's top crisis managers. On a laptop, we watched the raw, shaky footage from the student's camera. There was no sound, but the images were damning. You could see the crowded table, Sloane's defiant posture, Zane's aggressive grip on my wrist. You could see him shove food toward my face, my head turning away. You could see me stumbling back, my distress palpable, and Sloane's deliberate, sharp movement that sent me sprawling to the floor. You could see her heel come down on my hand. You could see Zane just standing there, laughing, before panic finally set in. It was uglier than I remembered. More violent. More real. Elias, who had been silent, steepled his fingers. "This changes the game," he said, his voice calm. "They've accused you of persecution. This is evidence of assault. We release it, but we do it correctly. Not through a screaming match on social media. We go through proper channels first. Proper channels? I asked. The police, John said, understanding dawning. We file a report for assault. We use this as evidence. Then we issue a statement. We don't look vengeful. We look like victims pursuing justice. Elias nodded. Exactly. We take the moral and legal high ground. Their live stream becomes evidence of their continued harassment and defamation. We bury them in procedure and fact. It was ruthless. It was perfect. I looked from John's determined face to Elias's coolly analytical one. These were my allies. This was how battles were won in my world. Not with screaming matches in parking garages, but with evidence, lawyers, and impeccable timing. Do it, I said. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. A police report was filed. A carefully worded statement from my lawyer was released to the press. Ms. Miller has been the victim of a sustained campaign of harassment, defamation, and physical assault, as documented in recently obtained evidence. She has pursued legal recourse to ensure her safety and correct the record. Any further public statements from Mr. Carter or Ms. Delaney will be considered part of this campaign and treated as such by our legal team. Then we released a 90-second edited clip of the student's video to a reputable news outlet. No commentary, just stark, silent footage with timestamps and explanatory captions. Subject with known allergy is pressured to eat triggering food. Subject is shoved to the ground. Subject's hand is stepped on. The court of public opinion flipped with dizzying speed. The narrative of the vindictive heiress shattered, replaced by socialite assaulted by ex-fiancé and his girlfriend. The comments now read, OMG, that's not a minor allergy, that's attempted murder. He's holding her down. Did you see her stomp on her hand? That's psycho behavior. They lied about everything. They're monsters. Zayn and Sloane's livestream was taken down. Their social media accounts flooded with outrage. The news vans that had been parked outside my building vanished, presumably headed to the now notorious diner. I should have felt vindicated. I mostly felt numb and deeply tired. The stain of their violation had now been smeared across the internet for everyone to see, even if the context had changed. My private pain was a public spectacle. A week later, the legal wheels turned. Zayn was formally charged with misdemeanor assault for the diner incident. Sloane faced charges for the same plus potential charges for the health code violations that, it turned out, were very real and not orchestrated by me at all. Their victim narrative collapsed under the weight of actual law. I was preparing for a black tie fundraiser with Elias when my assistant buzzed. Ms. Miller, a package was delivered for you. Personal. It looks not official. A cold trickle of apprehension ran down my spine. Bring it in. It was a small flat cardboard box. No return address. Inside, nestled on tissue paper, was a single artist's sketchbook. The cover was worn leather, familiar. Zayn's. My breath hitched. I opened it. The first pages were from early in our relationship. Sketches of me laughing, me looking out a window, me asleep on his couch. They were tender, beautiful, capturing a softness I'd forgotten I possessed. Then the pages turned darker. Angry, distorted figures. Scrawled words. Princess. Golden cage. Pages and pages of Sloane, drawn with a frantic, obsessive energy. Then near the end, a single detailed, exquisite drawing of my bare back. The same pose as the photograph, but rendered in charcoal with a shocking, painful intimacy. It wasn't a trophy here. It was a confession. A lament. On the very last page, a note in his messy script. Audrey. This was the only copy. The only one that ever mattered. I'm sorry for the pixels. They were a lie. This is the truth. Then I ruined it. It's over. For good this time. I slammed the book shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't an attack. It was a grenade of nostalgia and pain, disguised as an apology. It was meant to destabilize me, to make me question my cold victory. To remind me of the wildfire and make the vacuum seem emptier. I walked to the sleek gas fireplace in my new living room. I didn't hesitate. I opened the sketchbook to the drawing of my back, tore the page out carefully and held it to the blue flame. It blackened, curled, vanished into ash. I fed the rest of the book to the fire, page by page, watching the tender sketches and angry scrawls alike turn to nothing. The stain wouldn't wash out. but I could burn the reminders. When Elias arrived to pick me up, I was calm, composed in a floor-length navy gown. He offered his arm. "You look well," he said, his eyes briefly scanning my face. "The situation appears to be resolved." "It is," I said, taking his arm. The heat of the fire still felt on my fingertips. "Let's go." As we descended in the elevator, the silence between us was no longer just discreet. It felt for the first time like a shared understanding. We were both people who understood that some problems couldn't be solved, only contained. And some stains required not water but fire. The ashes of the sketchbook settled. The legal proceedings against Zane and Sloan ground forward with the impersonal efficiency of the justice system. I heard through John that Zane had taken a plea deal for the assault charge. Probation, community service, mandatory anger management. Sloan, facing the compounded issues with her diner, was fighting hers more fiercely. They were becoming footnotes, cautionary tales buried in the business section. The golden merger narrative with Elias regained its shine, polished to a high gloss by our combined PR teams. Yet, a new kind of tension began to thrum beneath the surface of my meticulously ordered life. It was no longer about external threats. It was internal. The approaching wedding, a spectacle of strategic unity, loomed like a final exam I wasn't sure I could pass. I had mastered the public performance, but the private reality of a life built entirely on a contract began to feel less like sanctuary and more like a beautifully appointed cell. Elias and I fell into a rhythm that was the envy of many. We were the couple who never fought, who always presented a united front. We discussed our schedules with the precision of generals coordinating a campaign. Tuesdays and Thursdays were for shared dinners, where we debriefed on business and planned upcoming public appearances. Weekends were often spent at his family's estate or mine, performing familial harmony. It was flawless. And it was slowly suffocating me. One Tuesday evening, over seared scallops at a restaurant so quiet we could hear the clink of every fork, Elias looked up from his tablet. "The seating chart for the reception is finalized. I've placed the Vanderbilts at table 3, away from the media magnates. Potential conflicts over the streaming rights deal." I nodded, pushing a scallop around my plate. "Makes sense." I took a sip of wine. "Elias, have you ever regretted this? The arrangement?" He set his tablet down, giving me his full, unnerving attention. "Regret implies an emotional expectation that was not met. I entered this with clear expectations and they are being met or exceeded. The Westgate development is ahead of schedule. Our combined portfolio has outperformed projections by 18%. He tilted his head, a rare show of curiosity. "Are your expectations not being met?" That was the problem. I hadn't allowed myself to have any beyond safety and stability. Now that I had them, I craved something nebulous and terrifying. A spark. Not the destructive wildfire of Zane, but a light. Any light. "No," I said finally. "They're being met." He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded, returning to his tablet. "Good. The rehearsal dinner is next week. My mother has requested a tasting of the menu. Your presence is required." Required. The word hung in the air between us. The rehearsal dinner was held in the ballroom of the Thorns Club, a temple of old money and older traditions. It was a gathering of two tribes, assessing each other across fields of white linen and gleaming silver. I wore a cream-colored sheath dress, feeling like a prized mare on display. Elias was at my side, a perfect portrait of patrician assurance, guiding me through a sea of handshakes and thinly veiled appraisal. During the salad course, an aunt of Elias's, a woman with eyes like flint, leaned over. "So, Audrey dear, we're all so relieved you came to your senses. That artist." She said the word like it was a contagious disease. "Such an unfortunate detour. But you're back where you belong." I forced a smile, my cheeks aching. "Thank you, Clarissa. Where I belonged. Was this it? This cold, glittering pinnacle?" Later, as a string quartet played something tastefully bland, I slipped away to a terrace for air. The city sprawled below, a map of possibilities that suddenly felt closed off. I leaned on the railing, closing my eyes against the wave of panic. "I thought I might find you here." I turned. It was John, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to me. "You look like you're planning a jailbreak." I managed a weak laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me." He leaned beside me looking out. It's a lot. Even when it's what you chose. I didn't choose this, I whispered, gesturing vaguely at the opulence behind us. I chose an exit strategy. I didn't realize the door would lock behind me. He's a good man, Audrey. In his way. He'll never humiliate you. He'll never be reckless with your heart. I know, I said, and the truth of it was a burden. But will he ever see me? Or am I just a particularly advantageous line item on his balance sheet? John was silent for a long moment. You wanted safety. Safety has a price. It's often a certain kind of loneliness. The word resonated in my hollow core. Loneliness. I had felt more alone in a room with Zane's contempt than I ever had by myself. But this was a different solitude. Profound, sanctioned, and expected to last a lifetime. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. A perfect day, as the coordinator chirped. My dress was a masterpiece of minimalist silk, worth more than Zane's studio lease for a year. A team of professionals turned me into the version of Audrey Miller that was to marry Elias Thorne. I looked in the mirror and saw a stunning stranger. The ceremony was to be at a modern glass chapel overlooking the river. I was in the bridal suite, a serene, sun-drenched room awaiting my cue. My heart was a frantic bird in a cage of silk and bone. This was it. The point of no return. I was about to trade the last vestige of unpredictable life for a permanent seat on a gilded board. I took a deep breath, trying to find the cold diamond of resolve that had gotten me through the confrontation with Zane. But it had melted, leaving only a pool of quiet dread. A soft click at the door made me turn, thinking it was the coordinator. It wasn't. He stood there, dressed in the uniform of the venue's catering staff. It was too big for him now. Zane. He was gaunt, his face all sharp angles and shadows, his eyes holding a feverish intensity that made my blood run cold. The lock on the door snicked softly behind him. He must have picked it. Audrey, he breathed. My God, you're a vision. Fear, sharp and immediate, shot through me. Zane. What are you doing here? How did you get in? He took a step forward, his hands out in a pleading gesture. I had to see you. One last time. Before you do this. This is my wedding day, I said, my voice low and venomous. Get out. Now or I scream. You won't, he said, and there was a terrifying certainty in his voice. You never liked scenes. He took another step, his eyes devouring me. I've had a lot of time to think. In therapy. Mandatory, remember? A bitter twist of his lips. I understand it all now. My self-sabotage. My insecurity. I pushed you away because I couldn't believe you were real. I tried to make you smaller so I could feel bigger. This is not the time for your epiphany, Zane, I said, backing toward the call button by the bed. I know, he said, his voice rising slightly before he checked it. But listen. I'm clean. I'm working construction, can you believe it? Honest work. I'm getting my head straight. For you. For me. I let out a disbelieving laugh. This has nothing to do with me. This is about you not being able to let go of a prize you think you lost. It's not about the prize, he insisted, a desperate crack in his voice. It's about you. The real you. The one who laughed at my stupid jokes. The one who wasn't afraid to get messy. He's never seen that you, Audrey. Thorne. He's buying the mannequin. He gestured to my dress, my hair. This isn't you. The real me got her intimate photos shared for laughs. I shot back, my fear hardening into anger. The real me was force-fed food she was allergic to. The real me is done with you. He flinched as if struck, but the desperate light in his eyes didn't dim. I'll spend my whole life making up for that. I'll be anything you need. A friend. Secret. I'll wait for you. He was spiraling, the rationality of therapy stripped away by obsession. He saw this wedding not as my choice but as a theft. And he was here to reclaim stolen property. You need to leave, Zane. The police are downstairs. Your probation officer would love to know you're here, harassing me. Harassing. He looked wounded. I'm saving you. From a life of quiet despair. You think you'll be happy with him? You'll be ornamental. I know you, Audrey. You have a fire in you. He'll extinguish it. His words found their mark, echoing my own terrorist fears. It gave him a flicker of hope. He took a final quick step and grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight, not violent, but implacable. Just think about it. Don't go out there. Come with me. We can disappear. Start over. His touch, once electric, now felt like a violation. The scent of him, stale coffee and cheap laundry soap, filled my nose, triggering a wave of nausea and visceral panic. This was no longer about love or regret. This was about possession, a toxic entitlement that refused to accept its own expiration date. Let me go. I snarled, trying to wrench free. Audrey, please. The door to the suite exploded inward with a crash that shattered the tense quiet. Elias stood in the doorway, his usually impeccable tuxedo jacket missing, his shirt sleeves rolled up. His face was a mask of cold fury I had never seen. He took in the scene in a nanosecond. Zane's grip on my wrists, my terrified face. Take your hands off my wife, Elias said, his voice low, lethal, and absolutely calm. Zane startled, loosening his grip enough for me to pull away. He turned to face Elias, a defiant, broken sneer on his face. She was mine long before she was yours, Thorn. You're just buying used goods. Time seemed to freeze. Then, in a blur of motion too fast to follow, Elias closed the distance. There was no dramatic wind-up, just a brutally efficient forward drive of his fist, planted squarely in Zane's solar plexus. It wasn't a punch of rage, it was a surgical strike. Zane folded with a sickening whoosh of expelled air, collapsing to the carpet, gasping like a fish. Elias didn't even look at him. He stepped over his writhing form and was at my side in an instant, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes scanning my face. Are you hurt? I could only shake my head, trembling violently now that the adrenaline was receding. Elias turned his gaze back to Zane, who was struggling to his knees. Security, alerted by the crash, surged into the room. Only a truly small man, Elias said, his voice cutting through Zane's ragged gasps, would weaponize a woman's past to hurt her in the present. Her history is none of my concern. Her future is. And you are not in it. He put a protective, firm arm around me, turning me away from the sight of Zane being hauled to his feet by security. Get him out of here. Call the police. Inform them he violated a restraining order and his probation. I hadn't even known Elias had secured a restraining order. As they dragged him out, Zane's eyes met mine over the security guard's shoulder. The madness was gone, replaced by a dazed, profound defeat. I'm sorry, Audrey, he choked out. I just loved you wrong. Then he was gone. The room was suddenly too quiet, filled only with the sound of my shaky breaths. Elias guided me to a chair, knelt before me and took my hands. They were steady, warm. Look at me, he said. I did. His eyes were no longer cold. They were focused, intense, alive. This changes nothing about our agreement, he said, his voice firm. Unless you wish it to. But know this, I do not see a prize or a merger. I see a partner who was just threatened in a space that should be safe. And that is unacceptable. He wasn't offering grand romantic declarations. He was stating a fact. My safety and dignity were now part of his calculus. It was, in its own way, more meaningful than any vow of eternal love. It was a vow of profound, practical respect. The coordinator appeared in the ruined doorway, her face pale. Mr. Thorne, Ms. Miller, the guests. Elias stood, pulling me to my feet. He straightened his cuffs, a simple, controlled motion. Tell them there was a security incident with an unstable individual. It has been handled. The ceremony will proceed in 20 minutes. He looked at me. Unless you say otherwise. I looked at the doorway where Zane had vanished. I looked at the smudge of dirt his shoe had left on the pristine carpet. I looked at Elias, standing firm amidst the chaos he had just ended. I took a deep, cleansing breath. The frantic bird in my chest settled. 20 minutes, I said, my voice finding its strength. I'll be ready. I wasn't just marrying a contract. I was marrying the man who had just, quite literally, fought for me. Not as a possession but as a partner whose peace was worth defending. It wasn't the spark I'd craved. It was something sturdier. A foundation solid enough to build a real life upon, not just a strategic alliance. The ceremony was surreal. A current of whispered scandal hummed beneath the soaring chords of the string quartet, but the public facade was flawless. Elias stood at the altar, unruffled, as if he'd just concluded a brisk board meeting rather than a physical confrontation. When I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, I saw only Elias's gaze, steady, assessing, and oddly reassuring. We recited the custom-written vows, which spoke of mutual respect, shared vision and steadfast partnership. They were beautiful, precise, and utterly devoid of the word love. It was perfect. The reception was a masterclass in damage control. The official story: a mentally unwell former acquaintance had attempted to gain access and was swiftly subdued, was accepted with polite, knowing nods. Our union was framed not just as a merger, but as a fortress, already proving its defenses. We danced the first dance, his hand firm on my back, my head held high. The applause was thunderous. Now, hours later, the silence of the penthouse's bridal suite was absolute. My quarters. The staff had discreetly delivered my things. The room was a study in luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the sleeping city, a bed like a cloud, an ensuite bathroom of marble and steam. A single, tasteful arrangement of white orchids sat on a console. It felt like the world's most beautiful hotel. I stood in the center of the room, still in my wedding dress, the adrenaline of the day finally leaching away, leaving a profound and echoing emptiness. I had done it. I was Audrey Thorne. Safe, secure, respected, and utterly alone. A light knock at the connecting door to the main living area made me jump. Audrey. Elias's voice, calm as ever. Come in. He entered, having shed his tuxedo jacket and tie. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves still rolled up from earlier, the first few buttons undone. He looked human. Tired. He carried 2 crystal tumblers with an inch of amber liquid in each. I thought you might need this more than champagne, he said, offering one to me. I took it gratefully, the whiskey burning a welcome path down my throat. Thank you. For today. For everything. He nodded, taking a sip of his own drink, his eyes scanning my face. It was handled. Are you all right? It was the second time he'd asked. The first had been in the immediate aftermath. This time he was asking about the deeper damage. I don't know, I answered honestly, the whiskey loosening my tongue. I feel numb. And guilty for feeling numb on my wedding day. There's no script for this, he said, walking to the window and looking out. Our arrangement was designed for stability, not for weathering attempted abductions by obsessed ex-fiancés. He glanced back at me. It complicates the narrative. A near hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. It does, doesn't it? He was silent for a moment. My priority is the success of this partnership. Your well-being is integral to that success. Therefore, your well-being is my priority. He said it like he was explaining a logical proof. If you need space, time, a separate residence for a while, it can be arranged. The offer was stunning in its generosity and its cold practicality. He was willing to alter the terms of our meticulously planned merger to accommodate my emotional state. Because unstable variables were bad for business. I don't need a separate residence, I said slowly. I need to know what this is. Tonight. Going forward. I gestured vaguely between us. The contract covers assets and public appearances. It's less clear on this. He understood. He turned fully to face me, leaning against the window frame. The contract is silent on personal intimacy because it was deemed a private variable. It assumed a discrete, mutually agreeable pattern would develop or not as suited both parties. He took another sip. Given the events of today, any assumption seems presumptuous. He was leaving the door open. For me, the power unexpectedly was in my hands. I thought of Zane's frantic, possessive grip. The violation of the photos. The way intimacy had become a weapon, a trophy, a source of shame. Then I looked at Elias, who had fought for me without theatrics, who offered me whiskey and logical solutions, who saw my distress not as a weakness to exploit, but as a problem to be solved for the health of our partnership. The silence stretched. I set my glass down with a soft click. I don't want to be a private variable, Elias, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not tonight. He watched me, his expression unreadable. What do you want? Courage, or perhaps the residue of the whiskey, propelled me forward. I walked to the closet where my things had been hung and found the garment bag from my best friend, Chloe. With it had come a note, for your wedding night. Something that makes you feel like you, not just a bride. Inside was a slip of lace and silk, delicate and undeniably sensual. I hadn't dared look at it earlier. I took it and walked into the bathroom without another word. When I emerged, the main lights were off. Only the soft glow from the city and a single lamp by the bed remained. Elias was sitting on the edge of the bed, his glass empty. He looked up. The lace felt like a whisper against my skin. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but not afraid. This was a different kind of nakedness. A chosen one. He didn't speak. He just looked, his gaze traveling over me with a slow, deliberate intensity that was neither clinical nor hungry. Was appreciative. As if assessing a masterpiece he'd been granted the privilege to view. "Is this," I began, my voice faltering. "Is this acceptable?" A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "It's more than acceptable, Audrey. You're breathtaking." He stood and crossed the room, stopping a foot away. He didn't reach for me. "We should establish a rule," he said, his voice low. "Tonight and going forward. Complete honesty. If anything is unwanted or uncomfortable, you say so. Immediately. No assumptions. No silent endurance. Understood?" Tears, sudden and hot, pricked my eyes. It was the antithesis of everything with Zane. Where Zane had taken, Elias was asking for permission. Where Zane had assumed ownership, Elias was proposing a treaty. "Understood," I managed. He lifted a hand slowly, giving me time to pull away. His fingertips brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek, then traced the line of my jaw. His touch was warm, sure, but infinitely gentle. "Hey, It was a question for everything." I nodded. He kissed me then. It was not the desperate, consuming fire of Zane's kisses. It was firm, deliberate, exploratory. A first meeting of minds as much as mouths. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine. "All right." "Yes." He led me to the bed, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Every step was a question, every touch a request granted. It was strange, this negotiated intimacy, but as the moments passed, the strangeness melted into something else. The safety he provided wasn't a cage. It was a clearing, a space where I could finally, tentatively, exist without fear of judgment or attack. There were moments of awkwardness, of course. A misplaced hand, a nervous laugh. But the honesty he demanded held. "Slower," I whispered once. "Like this?" he asked, adjusting. "Yes." Later, in the dark, wrapped in the clean scent of him and the fine linen sheets, the last of my defenses crumbled. The memory of Zane's sneering voice in the group chat surfaced, unbidden, nowhere near as wild as Sloane. A knot of old shame tightened in my chest. Elias was lying beside me on his back, staring at the ceiling, his breathing steadying. "Elias," I said into the darkness. I need to tell you something." The rule of honesty felt like a lifeline. "I'm listening." I wasn't. I took a shuddering breath. He used to say I was inhibited, that I wasn't adventurous. He made me feel like there was something wrong with me. The words tumbled out, stained with old humiliation. Elias was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he turned onto his side, propping his head on his hand. In the dim light, I could see the earnest focus on his face. "Audrey," he said, his voice devoid of any judgment. "Let me be unequivocally clear. Your worth, in any context, is not determined by a performance review from a man who couldn't recognize a treasure if it fell on him. What we just shared, it was mutual. It was respectful. It was, if I may say, profoundly satisfying." He reached out and traced the line of my shoulder. "There is no right way to be. There is only what feels right for the people involved. And tonight with you everything felt right to me." The knot in my chest loosened, then dissolved entirely, leaving behind a lightness I hadn't felt in years. He hadn't offered empty reassurance. He'd dismantled the criticism with logic and replaced it with a new, shared truth. "Besides," he added, a dry hint of humor in his tone, "I'm hardly a libertine. My experience is curated. And I have no interest in being compared to anyone's past either. It's irrelevant." I laughed then, a real watery laugh of relief. "So we're both satisfactorily inexperienced?" "We are both exactly as experienced as we need to be for this partnership," he corrected, but his eyes smiled. He leaned in and kissed my forehead, a gesture so tender it stole my breath. "Go to sleep, Audrey. The market's open in 7 hours." It was the most Elias thing he could have said. And as I drifted off, nestled in the strange, secure warmth of our contractual marriage, I realized something. The spark I'd been missing wasn't a raging fire. It was this. The quiet click of a perfect lock, the solidity of a well-made wall, the profound peace of being seen, respected, and safe. It wasn't the romance of storybooks. It was the foundation upon which a real, lasting story could actually be built. For the first time since the night in the hotel suite, I felt not like a victim or a prize or a strategic asset, but simply like myself. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The world after the wedding was different. The city's skyline looked the same, the headlines in the financial pages still followed predictable patterns, but the lens through which I viewed it all had shifted. Elias and I settled into the penthouse, an easy, quiet rhythm developing between our separate wings. Tuesdays and Thursdays remained business dinners, but the conversations over seared scallops or roasted chicken now sometimes strayed from market trends. He'd ask about a painting I'd chosen for my office. I'd inquire about his younger sister's equestrian ambitions. It wasn't romance. It was companionship, built on the solid ground of mutual respect and the shared secret of our unexpectedly successful wedding night. The ghost of Zane was laid to rest. The police had processed him for violating his probation and the restraining order Elias had quietly obtained. He was given a short jail sentence to be served concurrently with his existing probation terms. Sloane, embroiled in her own legal battles over the diner, vanished from the news. They became a closed chapter, a cautionary tale filed away. My work at the firm took on a new focus. With the stabilizing force of the Thorn Alliance behind me, I launched an initiative I'd been too timid to pursue before. A venture fund for women-led creative tech startups. It was my own project, separate from the family's traditional holdings. I called it Axiom Ventures. Axiom for a self-evident truth. The truth that diverse founders were an underserved asset class. I was in my new office at Axiom reviewing pitch decks when John walked in. He had a strange look on his face, not concern but deep bemusement. "You have a delivery," he said, placing a small, elegant white box tied with a silver ribbon on my desk. It was from a boutique known for its exquisite and exquisitely expensive lingerie. I stared at it. The card is inside. Wary of surprises now, I carefully untied the ribbon. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a slip of silk so fine it felt like liquid. It was a deep emerald green, a color I loved. The card was simple, thick cream stock. In Elias's precise, architectural handwriting it read, "For the founder of Axiom. To remind you that strength and sensuality are not mutually exclusive. E." My face grew warm. It was so utterly unlike him. Or rather, it was like the new him, the one who existed after the honesty of our wedding night. This wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a statement. An acknowledgement of my new role, and a private celebration of the multifaceted partnership we were building. It was, I realized, incredibly sexy. That evening, I wore it under a severe black pantsuit for our scheduled dinner. He said nothing about it throughout the meal, discussing instead the potential regulatory hurdles for one of our joint ventures. But as we finished dessert, his eyes met mine over the rim of his wine glass, and a slow, knowing smile touched his lips. It was a smile that spoke volumes, a secret shared in a room full of people. I felt a thrill that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with being truly seen. A month later, the second surprise came. I was preparing for a major pitch to a consortium of European investors for Axiom's first fund. The materials were perfect, my team was ready, but a low-grade hum of anxiety had been my constant companion for days. This was my first solo flight and the altitude was terrifying. The morning of the pitch, a courier delivered a flat, square package to my apartment. Inside was a custom-made leather portfolio, sleek and professional. But embossed on the front in subtle silver foil wasn't the Axiom logo. It was a constellation, the constellation Orion to be exact. I frowned, puzzled. Then I remembered. Months ago, during one of our first stilted dinners, Elias had asked about my college minor. I'd said, almost embarrassed, astronomy. Just for fun. He'd merely nodded. I'd assumed he'd forgotten. Tucked inside the portfolio was a note. Audrey. Orion was a hunter but also a navigator, steadfast in the winter sky. A point of reference. You don't need a reference point today. You are the constellation they will chart their course by. But carry this as a reminder. You know the stars. Now go show them the universe. I ran my fingers over the embossed stars, my throat tight. He hadn't sent flowers for good luck. He'd sent a totem. A piece of armor forged from a forgotten piece of myself. It was the most supportive thing anyone had ever done for me. The pitch was a triumph. I used the portfolio, my fingers tracing the raised stars when I needed to center myself. I spoke not just from business plans but from conviction. We secured the lead investment. That night I came home late, buzzing with exhausted elation. The penthouse was dark except for a light in the main living area. Elias was on the sofa, still in his work clothes, reading a prospectus. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket beside him, 2 glasses waiting. He looked up as I entered. "The wire transfer hit our escrow account an hour ago," he said without preamble. "Congratulations." I dropped my bag and the Orion portfolio onto a chair. "You heard. John may have texted." He stood and opened the champagne with a quiet pop, filling the 2 glasses. He handed one to me. "To Axiom. And to its formidable founder." We clinked glasses. The champagne was crisp, perfect. "The portfolio," I began, emotion choking my words. "Elias, it was, thank you." He shrugged, a rare, almost awkward gesture. "It was a logical choice. You required confidence. Confidence is built on identity. I merely provided a tangible link to a part of yours." He said it like he was explaining an investment strategy, but his eyes were soft. I stepped closer into his space. The hum of the city was far below us. "It wasn't just logical," I said softly. "It was kind. It was perfect." He studied my face, his own usually impassive mask gone. In its place was something raw and open. "I find," he said, his voice low, "that I am increasingly invested in the success of all your ventures, Audrey. Not just the ones that bear our shared name." It was the closest he'd ever come to saying something that wasn't in the contract. I set my glass down. He set his down beside it. The space between us crackled with a new kind of potential, one that had grown slowly, organically, from the seeds of honesty and respect we'd planted. "Elias," I whispered. "Yes. The rule still stands. Complete honesty." "It does." "I want you to kiss me," I said, the words clear in the quiet room. "Not because it's Tuesday or because it's expected, but because I had a very good day and I can't think of anyone else I'd rather debrief with." A real smile, one that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face, broke across his features. It was a breathtaking sight. "That," he said, closing the final distance between us, "is the soundest business proposition I've heard all day." His kiss was different this time. It was not the careful, exploratory kiss of our wedding night, nor the knowing smile over wine glasses. It was confident, celebratory, and held a warmth that seeped into my very bones. It was a kiss between partners who had just discovered their joint venture was yielding unexpected, spectacular dividends. Later, as we lay tangled in the sheets of his bed, a first, the silence was comfortable, alive. His arm was around me, my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "This changes the variables," he murmured into my hair, his voice sleepy. "I know," I said. "Do you want to renegotiate the terms?" He was silent for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I think we should tear up the old contract entirely." My breath caught. "And do what?" He shifted, leaning up on one elbow to look down at me. In the dim light, his expression was solemn, serious. "Write a new one. Together. In real time. With no pre-approved clauses. Just what works. For us." It was a greater leap of faith than any vow spoken in a glass chapel. It was a willingness to step into the unknown together without a map. I reached up and touched his face. "I'd like that," I said. "But I have one non-negotiable condition for the new agreement." "Name it." "The honesty rule stays." He captured my hand, kissed my palm. "The honesty rule," he said, "is the foundation. Everything else is just architecture." And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that the strategic merger had become something else entirely. It had become a love story. Not the kind I'd once fantasized about with Zane, all storm and drama and consuming fire. This was a love built like a Thornmiller joint venture, on a bedrock of respect with careful attention to detail, designed for long-term growth and mutual prosperity. It was quiet, it was strong, and it was quite possibly indestructible. As I fell asleep, the constellation of Orion visible through the vast window, I felt a peace so profound it was like coming home after a very long, very arduous journey. I had found my navigator. And together we were just beginning to chart our own stars. The end.